All right, we are live. I'm here with Megan. Hey, Megan.
Hey RJ, how are you?
Good. This is like the backstage banter is great. It reminds me of like being at a show and then like everyone comes out and everyone wonders what we were talking about, but wasn't that
I know
interesting.
RJ's been giving me a hard time. That's all.
Um, we
And
are
we're discovering
happy.
a mutual love of chocolate.
So much good chocolate.
Yeah.
Chocolate and peanut butter, I think, is the best combo, and that existed decades before the Goose and Tab uh, thing.
You mean before the HF Pod Wook Plus collab?
Yeah, right. Good point. Good point.
That was
We are
first.
we are happy that you all are here. And Michael Myers, who's watching on YouTube, says happy Hampton '09 anniversary. That is a great point. I think I like wasn't even going to say that. So thank you, Michael, for reminding us that it's Hampton '09 anniversary. If you are a subscriber to Osiris Premium, then today you'll hear a new bonus episode where we talk about our favorite, not our favorite, a recommended album from 1990, the year that we are in, to talk about Fish today. So if you're interested in seeing what we're up to, check out osirispod.com/premium. You get a bonus episode every week, which is mostly more of us talking nonsense, but also ad-free episodes. So that's one thing. The other thing is that Megan and I both love peanut butter and chocolate. So what do you know?
And you can also hear us talk about Mexico. I don't know
Good
that I
point.
did so very eloquently, but
Friday was hard. Friday was hard
yeah.
for everybody, but we did talk about Mexico. And for those of you who tuned into the recap, Megan and I were both still traveling, and I think that the headline was that Mexico is so fun. And I don't know. I think it's like, I understand the idea that it's only for like the super rich fish fans, but I would rather pay to go to Mexico and see fewer fish shows in the United States. That's my that's like where I am right now. That might be
Yeah, and I think a
controversial.
lot of people like save up for it and it's kind of a special thing they do every year. It doesn't seem like it's just for people who can do things like that all the time.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
And this is like it's the one time a year that my wife and I leave our kids, and so anyway, Mexico was great. That's the recap. The music was very good, but I maybe there is like a cooling off period, or there's like asterisks or something, because it really is like about the atmosphere.
Yeah, I think there's just a major attendance bias in Mexico. I think it's hard to have a bad show in Mexico, like as a
Yep,
fan.
yep.
And maybe the band's just super relaxed too. I don't know. I thought every show was great. And then I came back and found out maybe they weren't all that great.
You found
But
out you
I don't
found out
know.
after the fact.
Yeah, I
I
listened to
thought
the
I had
recap.
fun. I thought I had fun, but then found out I didn't. Um,
Exactly.
Speaking of attendance bias, we saw our friend Brian from Attendance Bias
Yeah.
in Mexico. I actually one night I was going to get a drink or use the bathroom or both probably, and he was eating tacos and shooting the shit with some people, and it was good to see him down there. I hope he had fun. I'm sure he did.
Yeah, he did. He said that he ran into you. We've become really good friends. So I got to hang out with him a little bit in Mexico too. It was awesome and just fun to talk to him about the shows and enjoy that experience with him.
Nice. Okay, so we are continuing our 40 for 40 project, where we bring you 40 Fish Inside Project shows to celebrate the band's 40th anniversary. We took a week break, obviously, for Mexico, but now we're back. And today we're talking about 9/13/1990, from the wetlands in New York City. And Brian is going to join us soon. Jonathan is, I think, out today. So I think it's the two of us. And then Brian will pop in at some point. But I guess before we do that, Megan, what's your exposure been to 1990 Fish?
Not a ton. I mean, I've listened to a little bit, but it's not like I collected tapes from 1990. I was really someone who collected tapes to shows that I'd been to and shows that kind of like from when I started going to see Fish onward. I never really looked back historically until I started listening to HF Pod, to be honest. That was kind of my introduction to like looking back at Fish historically. So this project has been incredible because listening to them chronologically has just been super interesting for me. And this year is really cool. This is an interesting year in Fish history, and it's really fun to listen back to the show. How about you? Did you collect a lot of tapes from 90?
I did, and I should share. I wonder if I can do it in here. I should share my photo of the J cards, which are hanging behind me on my wall from this show, because I have them here. This was a show that I had early on, and it was kind of like I think it was a well circulated tape. This was the eighth and last show at the Wetlands.
I know. I was
It's
just
kind of
looking at
crazy.
that too. Yeah. They opened in like what, early 1989, and they played there, yeah, 8 times over those 2 years. And then that was it. They grew too big.
It was a pretty wild show, and a lot of really fun stuff happened. Um, so I'm gonna tweet this photo of my J cards that I took, just in case anyone wants to see my handwritten set list from, I don't know, 1995, I guess, when I got it. But what else do we need to say before we get into the music? 'Cause there's kind of a lot to discuss here. A lot of debuts, a lot of interesting covers. Guest, there's a guest appearance. There's a lot going on.
Yeah. Well, do you want to go to Meg's Corner and hear about what was going on in Fish in
I do.
1990?
I do.
Okay,
I
great.
do.
Awesome. So in
While you do that, can
1990,
I eat a
yeah.
piece of chocolate?
Okay, yeah. Just
Okay.
maybe mute yourself so
Okay.
we don't like
All
hear
right.
you chewing or
Okay, great.
unwrapping.
Okay.
So in 1990, Fish played 150 shows, which is just bonkers. It's the most shows they've ever played in 1 year in their whole career. So to me, this is the year of this is the hustle, you know? In 1989 was like expansion. They were really going places they hadn't been before. In 1990, they're just hustling. You know, they travel more than ever before in 1990. They're doing multiple runs in the South, the Midwest, Colorado. They're sharing stages with bands like Widespread Panic, Blues Traveler, Aquarium Rescue Unit. Then over July and August, they take this break from touring and they just write a ton of music that's going to become Picture of Nectar. And Lawn Boy is going to be released in September. That's going to be released on Absolute A Go Go. And even though this label is going to go bankrupt, this album did pretty well. And it actually started to get Fish some notice in the news media as well. They're going to play a packed house, the Capitol Theater in Port Chester on Saturday of Thanksgiving weekend. Everyone knows how special that venue is. You think about like what's going on right now for Goose right there this coming up week. Like the Capitol Theater is it's an epic theater, and just knowing that they played a sold out show there in 1990 just tells you kind of like what was happening for Fish then. And at the end of the year, Sue Drew, the talent scout, she's going to go and see them at the Marquee Club in New York, and she's going to give them her card and introduce them to Elektra Records, which is going to be a big deal for them moving forward. And musically, they've got some cool things going on. They're introducing more bluegrass and barbershop songs like Caroline, Sweet Adeline, and Uncle Pen. We've got Hold Your Head Up becoming Fisherman's intro music this year. And then one of the things that's super cool, especially in regards to the show we're going to talk about today, is that they're going to invent the musical secret language. And the debut of that language at this show is so fucking cool. I think it's just really interesting that when they're home writing these songs for Picture of Nectar and they're not on stage, they decide to invent this way to talk to each other in a really unique way on stage and also communicate with the audience. So I just think it's really interesting. And this show is, I mean, there are 12 songs debuted at this show, which is just nuts. And this year in 1990, they're going to debut 39 songs. 39
That's
songs
crazy.
in 1 year.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got songs like Bouncing Around the Room, Squirming Coil, Rift, Tube, Tweezer, Cavern, Runaway Jim, Horn, Stash, Megillah, Landlady, Buried Alive, Destiny Unbound, Eliza, Gumbo, and Llama. Classic Fish.
And like typical Trey, I think he can't like really wait till the next thing. It's like typically you
Yeah.
would like tour on an album, and then like they're already putting out songs this year from their album 3 years from now.
I
They
know,
just like
it's
can't
crazy.
they just like can't wait. And they were writing so much new stuff, and it's really interesting. The opener, well, actually, before we get into that, I just want to just I promise I won't do this anymore, but just to go back to Mexico for a second, Incredible Perp said he picked it was either Mexico or MSG for him this year. Picked MSG. Maybe next year he'll flip it. And I just want to say that makes sense. I'm not going to any MSG shows this year, for better and worse. But so you can do it. You can do it. You just have to miss other shows.
That makes
Okay.
a lot of sense. Brian, come find me at MSG.
um, so this is like a really different sounding band from '89. I feel like maybe I've said that
Mhm.
every time we've done this show
Yeah.
so far, but doesn't it seem like they're like a real like a real band, not even like a bar band. They sound like a real touring band at this point. It's like super tight. It's just, I don't know. To me, it sounded like from the beginning, I'm like, wow, this is like a really, really solid go.
Yeah, they're super confident and they're playing really well. I mean, they're not missing a beat. They're playing really, really, they're playing a lot of like complicated new songs and they're playing tons of new songs and playing them really well, which I think just shows how much they're probably rehearsing. And they sound great. I mean, there's not a lot of variation or improv in these shows, but there's definitely still some like unique soloing and kind of like interplay and talk between the band members, but it's definitely a band that is like working on their songs and working on, performing last week, or 2 weeks ago, excuse me, when we had Brian Weinstein from Attendance Bias on, he was talking about how the band in the late 80s, early 90s is really starting to focus on all their music and playing lots of music. And that's maybe one of the reasons why they're not jamming so much. So that made a lot of sense to me. And I see that here too.
Yeah. And just like that, just in time to discuss the opener, we have the closer, Brian Brinkman, joining us. Hey,
Hey,
Brian.
Brian.
I have my coffee because coffee is for closers.
We were just getting into it, Brian. We went through Meg's corner where she set up the year in Fish, and there'll be more talk of that. But we're coming out of the gate here with a debut of The Landlady, and this Wetlands show, Brian. Just the one thing we mentioned is that this was their 8th and final Wetlands show over the course of a couple of years, and they will never play there again after this. And this was a good one to go out on. But Landlady, Divided Sky, Foam, and then that debut of Tube. That's like a pretty solid way to start a show.
Do you know what else debuted on September 13th, 1990?
I'm going to find out.
Law and Order.
Really?
That is just fantastic.
Wow.
Thursday night, huh? Was it
Thursday
a Thursday night
night.
show? I guess
Thursday
so.
night, September 13th, 1990, the
Wow.
debut of Law and Order. So many spin-offs, so much television, so many cold cases that will suddenly be solved in 45 minutes
Ugh.
time. Just amazing.
So many actors
amazing
getting work
stuff.
in New York City.
Yeah, I
Brian-
feel like, isn't that where Chris O'Donnell is still acting today?
I believe
Brian,
so.
I feel like most people come into a show late and they gotta like try to like catch up and like maybe wait a few minutes, but you just come in and drop a bomb immediately. It's
It's a
awesome.
huge bomb, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
Is
great.
there
Huge.
any
And it
more
changes the whole
rewatchable
episode.
show? Like, is there any more rewatchable show than Law and Order? You can just like dive
Probably
in
not.
and you're just going and you
You can just
you
do
question and then have faith in the justice system all in one sitting.
It's very
Um,
satisfying.
it.
Very satisfying.
Hmm.
So and the Landlady also
And the
debuts.
Landlady dedicated
also
to the
satisfying.
spirit of Carlos.
Yes.
Yeah.
Although it does, Fishnet does say that it's the first known performance. So it's
Yeah,
interesting
why
that
are they
Tube.
so like flagging that?
Yeah, there's some that
Mhm.
are not that are just like debut, but this is for some reason is maybe there's a possibility. I guess there's a possibility that all of these things were played like pre 90
Well-
3, but
Is it because it comes after Punch You in the Eye was retired like 10 months later or earlier? So that's why they don't know if this is and they played a couple of those shows this summer that I don't think we have set lists or circulation for. Is that true?
I'm just looking through the 1990. There's no known set list from the Ranch on September 2nd.
Hmm.
August 4th is an unannounced private party. No known set list from Ardmore, Pennsylvania, the Cabaret on July 8th.
that's the Ardmore Music Hall. I just want you to know that, just for the record.
That is now the
That's
Ardmore Music Hall.
amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's amazing. That's incredible. Right down the street from me. The last known show is 6/16/1990 from Townsend Family Park in Vermont. So yeah, this could be there could be other performances of this. Obviously, this was played within Punch You in the Eye, but a notable opener that will go on to really dominate their performances over the next 4 years, and then will become this what was it, like a 15-year, no, it was probably like a 20-year gap between the last time
Mhm.
it was played, and then it was Dick's 2015, and then it's kind of been scattered. It's been this announcement that they're going to play a big show when they open it, until
Mm.
Alpine Night 3 2022 when they opened it and then did not.
I can't wait
Oh
until you don't
God.
have to. I can't wait until you don't
They-
have to use Alpine Night 3 anymore in
I know.
your analyses. Um,
The show that should not be named.
No, should not.
I saw my first landlady ever at Mexico 2020.
Wow,
Mexico
really?
2020,
Yeah,
because
first
they
Wow.
time.
played it in 20s. I'm just pulling up all the stats. There's so many 90, 91, 92, 93, 94 performances, and then it stops. And there's a
Yeah.
768 show gap before Dick's 2015. Mexico.
And another one before they busted it out at that amazing Alpine show.
That was an Alpine
Amazing
Night 3
closing
show
night.
that absolutely ruled.
Hmm.
Um, you were
So
noting you were noting Tube. I have a lot on Tube. Can we jump into Tube?
yeah,
Let's do it.
it's a jam chart debut, which is hard to pull off. But and I was saying before you joined, Brian, I think this is
Yeah.
like a band that sounds not like a bar band, but like a touring band.
I was thinking
You
about
know?
that during Divided Sky and Foam. Like, my only
Yeah.
note
Mhm.
for Foam is that we're just in an era where every single version of Foam somehow slays, and it really makes you forget how complicated of a song it is, because it's flawless,
Mhm.
and it's a band that is practicing this song on a regular basis now, and are kind of using songs like Foam as a kind of a testing ground of where they are and how connected they are. And this is the show that they're putting forward. It doesn't have as much to do with jamming as we knew in the mid 80s, or as we're going to know in the mid 1990s. The reason you go to see Fish is because no other band is playing songs like Foam accurately, and playing them as aggressively as they are. But Tube, okay, there's a lot here. This song sounds completely out of step with Fish 1990. And it's fascinating to me that this is a
Mhm.
song that will not yet reach its peak for 7 years. And if you look at the way that they performed it over the first couple of years of its existence, so it's been played 181 times total, 10 times through the end of 1990. Then there's this 111 show gap before it's played on 10/24/91. You get an 18, or you get it played 18 times in the fall of 1991, before a 35 show gap before it's played on 4/19/92. And then from 4/19/92 to 12/7/97, Dayton, Ohio, amazing version of Tube, it is played a total of 11 times. So it's like the band
Wow.
doesn't know what to do with this
Crazy.
song. It is so
Mhm.
fast. It is so, the lyrics are strange. It's very clearly out of John Fishman's mind. And it's until that 12/7/97 show that it almost doesn't click. It's just kind of,
Mhm.
we haven't played this in a while. Let's throw it out there. Shermith is saying he thinks that, I'm going to throw this up on, can I do this? Do I have the ability to? Yeah. Tube seems like it should have debuted in 1997. Sort of a
Mhm.
noob. Shermith, you have perfect attendance to HF Pod. You are not a noob here. You're blown away to see this as an early 90s song. I always am blown away. I did like a full re-listen of 1992, 93 at one point, and every time you hear Tube, it's like the first time you've heard it on that tour, and it sounds totally bizarre and doesn't sound like the band. It's not like they don't know how to play it, but it just doesn't totally fit their sound at that point. And then boom, it comes at the end of that Dayton 97 first set, and it's like a fully realized part of their catalog.
It's so
Just
weird. I feel like they've always been like that, like writing songs that like wouldn't come into their own until later points in their career. You know, it's like they've been ahead of their time, even within themselves. It's so crazy.
I got this when I was listening to this. I was thinking like, the after Trey like refers to Fishman throughout. But I just like the fact that they're like, this is a new song that, he wrote the lyrics to, complete nonsense. And they're just like so open to just like playing new material that's not at all like mainstream, and just kind of like following their instincts for like what would be, what should we play tonight, and it's like, let's debut this song that Fishman has wrote the lyrics for that make no sense whatsoever, and having no real, I don't think, it doesn't seem like there was any like hesitation. It's just like, yeah, we're gonna play Tube now, which is just amazing.
They're taking
Totally
so many
ridiculous.
risks in this show. I mean, they
Yeah.
sound super hungry. And Trey even says, I think after Divided Sky, he's like, it's really great to be playing again. It's been a long time because they've been off all summer, like we talked about in the intro. But yeah, I mean, you can really hear them like leaning into that. And Trey's like keeps saying that, like, thank you for listening to all this new music. We've got a lot of new music. And when he introduces the Ass Festival, he's like, this next tune is called the Ass Festival. Enjoy. It's just so funny.
It's wild to think as well, as you noted, because I was looking at the touring routing this year. This is the last summer that at least Trey will not be touring until 2007.
Wow.
It's going to be a 16-year, 17-year run of touring, both with Fish, with Tab, 70 Volt Parade, the Grab Tour in 2006. There's so much, like, summer is going to define this band in a lot of ways. And it's the last time, as they're entering the 1990s, it's the last time that they're going to not play a summer tour. It's really wild. And they do this massive fall tour that I know a lot of people have considered their first ever tour. I think you can make the argument 89, they're really doing a big tour, but this is like the first time they're doing a full national touring circuit throughout the year.
Brian, to your earlier point, I was going to maybe say this later. I can't remember what song I was listening to, but I'll just now, because we're talking about this, but anyone who thinks that Fish was playing flawlessly in terms of composed stuff in the 90s should go back and listen to this show, because like you said, there's a lot of like Foam is kind of perfect, but there's some stuff that's not like, if you played this for someone today and you're like, this is from Mexico, people would be like, Fish fucking sucks now. Like, it's like they're kind of missing notes, they're kind of missing changes, and partially that might be because some of these songs are brand new, but it just reminded me that like we have this nostalgia of like when Fish was great compositionally, but like they've always been a little all over the map depending on the year and the day and the show.
Yeah, the humorous side of them and also the risk-taking side. And this is something like we'll get into in the second set, because there's a really amazing segment of fully flowing music deep in set 2 that I did not expect when I pressed play on the show. That sort of stuff is like the humor and the improv is not possible without a looseness that Trey always talks about, going on stage, forgetting everything, not thinking contextually. That's our job, to think contextually of like, what does this song and this spot mean? What does this show mean? For them, I don't think they're thinking about that really at all. It's how do we get this to muscle memory? And I think a lot of what they're doing at this state of their career is figuring out how does practice best serve us. And I think it's going to take a couple of years to fully figure this out. But I think, to your point, RJ, they're already starting to figure out that practice is not for them to get everything right and then play it exactly that same way on stage. It's to meet the energy of the crowd, build up the energy of the crowd, and allow the unknown to happen. And by that whole combination, a lot of bands that nail everything that they play on stage do not think that way. They are giving you a show that is rehearsed within an inch of its life so that you feel what the artist is intending you to feel. Fish wants to be a part of whatever that feeling is. And so you're going to get missed notes here and there. And it reminds me, there was a really funny Fantasy Tour thread somewhere in mid 2009, 2010, when Fish's kind of stated goal at the time was to relearn their songs and really rededicate themselves to their songwriting. And there was a lot of criticism that they weren't doing that they weren't even jamming, but they also weren't nailing all their compositions. And someone went through and put up all the flubs from 1993 and 1994 into like a mix.
That's
and
amazing.
You just saw people like collectively pissed off that 1993 Fish was not actually perfect.
Anytime a band is going to debut 39 songs in a year or 12 songs in a show, they are not going to be perfect. Like, that is just, it's playing in a way that's just so risky. And there's no other word for it. I keep trying to think of another word for it, but there's really not. It's so risky to do that. And I don't know many other bands that would do that. And yeah, it's going to lead to flubs, but it also leads to this like crazy energy. And I think that, like I was talking about in the intro, like when you are trying to find a way to communicate with your band members in a secret language so you can stop on a dime and start a whole new song within another song, you're trying to play in a different way than most bands.
Yeah. Yeah, and so they come a lot. I mean, there's a lot going on here with these debuts. There's a lot, as you mentioned at the beginning, Megan. Of course, the Ass Festival becomes part of Gula eventually. It doesn't last very long, that song, which kind of makes sense because it
24
starts.
total times played.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it starts abruptly, it ends kind of abruptly. It was kind of meant to be part of a part of a broader song, I think. But
That's kind of
this,
what they were doing then, right? Like finding like
yeah,
parts of old songs, making them new songs, taking new parts, making new songs from that. It's pretty cool.
yeah, exactly. And then they go into, then they like, without hesitation go into Antelope, which is just really fun to hear how far this song has come. I feel like I'm being nostalgic for our, episode from 3 weeks ago. But this song has come a long way.
It has, and they're also still, to your guys' point, they're still figuring out where do these songs go in the shows. Antelope is going to
Mm.
ultimately become a set closer or often, occasionally an encore piece. Throwing it midway in a set isn't really something that we expect from this vantage point of seeing Fish, but it's an interesting. I kind of wish that they would do this more. I feel like Antelope in this slot, like midway through the first set, would just elevate the overall energy of a show. And it's kind of one of those songs, we're talking about this push and pull of Fish allowing freedom to take over. Plus, there's all these heavy compositions. Antelope's kind of one of those songs that there's not a ton of complicated compositions to it. I think this was like the third Fish song I learned how to play because I was shocked at like how easy every part of it was. And it's all energy once you get to the back half. It's just like
Mhm.
how long can you ride that, building peak of a couple of chords, and how can you like build up the tension and build it and build it and build it and then have it all, release into the back end, the Marco Esquandola segment. And this just showcases what that can do in the middle of a first set. You talk about all the debuts as well. I have it noted that after the debut of Buried Alive, a song that feels like Fish wallpaper, like it feels like it always just existed and was always there in the water. Um, to have a song like that and a song like Stash later in the second set debut. But at the end of Buried Alive, Trey kind of asked the crowd, "Are you guys okay with all these debuts? Like, thank you so
Yeah.
much for hanging with us, and thank you so much for allowing us to do this." And it's clear that over the summer, there's a lot of songwriting that's happened, and there's a lot of ideas, and they're really excited about them. You've got to wonder what it was like in the room with these songs debuting. Anyone who's there has an idea of what Fish is. And now there are new songs that to us, I think when we all started seeing Fish, these all felt like Fish songs.
Mhm.
But in the moment, these are like brand new ideas that are adding to the overall canon of Fish. It's a really interesting push and pull.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to hear Buried Alive in like the middle to the end of a first set. Like it's to me, it's such an
Just like thrown
opener.
in there.
Yeah, just like here you go.
The Doobie Brothers cover Minute by Minute is just, I mean, only played 3 times, all in 1990. I understand why.
In like 3 weeks too.
It's
Like
just like
just yeah.
just totally ridiculous and not even really worth revisiting. I mean, except for like hilarity's sake,
I mean, at
which is
first I
part
was
of
like,
that.
this is kind of cute. And then by the end, I was like, no, it's not. I don't want this anymore.
This and well, I guess Trey sings on Going Down Slow, but like
Hmm.
both of these songs I think are played at the exact same shows 3 times over the next 3 weeks and then never again.
Yeah.
Going Down Slow would, it seems like, be replaced by My Soul. Um, whether or not we need another Fish bar blues song, you guys decide. I'm gonna step out to have a smoke during that.
We'll pass too.
Well, okay. There's nothing there's nothing really happening there. But then they debut Buried Alive. Then they debut Paul and Silas. And I mean, you know, I got no problem with these songs. I like that they were bringing in bluegrass, as Megan mentioned at the beginning of the episode. And I want to talk about Bounce Around the Room, but what else?
Hmm.
What else with these songs before we get to Bounce Around the Room, Possum?
There's something kind of interesting about Paul and Silas. Apparently, that in the beginning, Trey was calling this song the wrong name. Until 1992, he was calling it Hall and Solace. And then once they started playing Down South, they were corrected. And then they figured out, like, oh, it's actually called Paul and Silas.
Yeah, he introduces it as a Flat and Scruggs song as Hall and
Mhm.
Silas, and then sings it. And I was listening to it, and I had this moment of like, is that the wrong name of the song? Like
Right.
what you know? And so I started doing like a big Google because I was wondering if like someone had like because it sounds almost like he says Paul, but
Yeah,
yeah,
it
it's Hall
does.
and
Mhm.
Silas, and it's a funny little addition for a song that is debuted, and it's been played 91 times, is played a bunch through 1990, 91, 92, 93, and since 1994 it's been played a handful of times. It's kind of one of those, hasn't been played since 722 2016 to this point in time. It's really one of those rarities that if you catch it, you're pretty lucky at this point in time to get it.
So I was listening to Bounce Around the Room and thinking about, because I was wondering, I couldn't remember if it was new this year or not. It was new in '89. Um, they did play a lot of shows in 1990, but they played Bounce in 47th. This is the 47th time they played Bounce in 1990, which is
Wow.
Wow.
like in 9 months. And Trey noted that it's been a long time since they played, which is also funny because it had been like less than 3 months. But at that point in their career, that's like an eternity.
Yeah,
Like now they take 3 months off between every run, and it's like at least.
at
But
least. Yeah.
playing it 47 times in 9 months with a 3 month break makes that, my math is right, 47 times in 6 months, which is like a shit ton. Do you think that they were playing it at the time that much because they were thinking in the back of their minds, or consciously, that this has the potential to be a hit? Or do you think they just liked playing the song, or are those two things the same?
For me, I think that like when I heard this, it sounds so different from what they're playing, the other stuff they're playing. Like it sounds so much more delicate, and obviously they're playing at a slower tempo. But to me, they're also singing in a different way than Trey has been singing in a lot of the, late 80s, early 90s. And I'm wondering if it just felt interesting to them, like a new direction.
I think you're right. I think they had to be thinking at this point in time with Lawn Boy about to come out. Um, a lot of songs that are going to go on Picture of Nectar are being written. Um, they had to be thinking at this point about some sort of radio crossover. And a song like Bouncing, it was one of the early Fish songs I ever heard. And it was the first Fish song that
Hmm.
I heard where I was like, this sounds like a normal song.
Yeah, exactly.
Where it doesn't sound like they're trying to take rock music and skew it around a bunch and like, mess around with kind of the structure and you're listening to rock music, but you're also listening to something that you've never actually heard before. Bouncing just sounds like a song that like any band could write. And I don't mean that as a insult in any sort of way. Like it's a huge accomplishment that in 3 minutes time, Trey and Tom were able to concoct something that has a full image, and the end of it is one of my favorite written things that the band has ever written. Um, it's wild. You're talking about, what did you say, 47 times since its debut? I was just going through. So Bouncing has been played 478 times at this point in time. Can you guys guess what the biggest gap is since its debut? And just to clarify, it debuted. It was a 320th Fish show when they debuted this. That is by
Hmm.
far the biggest gap. But since then, do you guys throw any guess out of what the longest gap is since then?
Nope.
10, 12.
I was gonna say like 25, but I don't know.
23 times.
Wow.
Between 7/10
Well done, RJ.
2019 at the Mohegan Sun Arena, summer 2019. They would not play it again until the first show back in Arkansas, 7/28 2021, almost 2 years
Mm.
between a live bouncing. But yeah, I was going through like there's a 10 show gap here and there, there's a 14 show gap here and there, but like pretty much this song is every 2 to 5 shows for a 33-year period in time. It's wild.
Yeah. I mean, this is the song that like all the people that didn't like Fish knew about still. So
Yeah.
yeah, it definitely had that crossover. But do you think the band wanted to be on the radio at this point?
I think so.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
would
I
think
think Brian Goldenberg, sorry, who just put this comment up, said that he saw the Lawn Boy CD party and was supposed to go to the wetlands, and he said, "I know for sure, chatting with Mike Gordon, that was supposed to be a single." So clearly they were. I mean, it's like it's one of their best songs. It's possibly their best song. Still, I think
my
it's up there. I think
second
it's top 5 in terms
my
of like.
second physical
Yeah.
like my second physical Fish record was a live one, and I bought it. I don't even know why I bought it. I knew I needed to get another Fish. I knew I needed to get something live from Fish because I had heard Rift and I kind of got it, and it was called a live one. So I was like, well, this must. And the first song I heard was Bouncing, opening track of the overall record. And I was like, wow, I really like this. And then I think I listened to that on repeat, that and Wilson, and I didn't listen to anything else for like 6 months. I just would listen to the first songs on each because they're the ones
That's
that like
amazing.
just immediately get to you. And the Wilson is such a cool trick, but then like when they go into the 30-minute tweezer, I just couldn't handle that at that point in time. So there was like a 6-month period of time where this was really all I knew of Fish.
Makes so much sense. I think that you're not alone in that.
Okay, well, I think they did a good job with this song. I would say
think
this
it's a
is
great song.
I would say, like, with the exception of like maybe one of the songs that came out in the past 3 years, like Leaves, or some of this. There's a couple songs on Sigma Oasis that I think are up there in terms of quality songs that could be heard on the radio, I guess is what I mean.
Lonely
There's
Trip.
Waste, Lonely Trip. There's Waste, of course. Waste and Bouncing seem like the biggest candidates. But it's a great song, so they should keep playing it. I love hearing this song.
Me too. Makes me feel really young.
That's a good point. Can we live while we're young or
Or
old?
old.
Or old.
Or old.
Mhm.
Okay, so set 2, we get who knows what the set break was like. I bet it was pretty crazy, actually. Because this is a small venue here, right?
Wait, but we didn't talk about Possum.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a good Possum to close out a show. They played Possum at the Fish for Kids show over the weekend that I took my kids to. And I just had the realization I have every time I hear Possum live. How can you not dance when this song is playing?
Right?
Yeah. Well, you can stand there with your arms crossed, that's another option.
Well, that's how I stand for every other part of the show except for Possum.
Oh, yeah. I was talking to a friend who went to a show here in Philly, an indie rock show, and we're like, everyone was just like standing around. And I was like, that's what you have to do if you go to an indie rock show, or else you might get kicked out.
If you look like you're having fun, you're screwed, man.
You're not cool at all.
No.
Okay. Mike's song, Hydrogen, We Could Paw Groove. And then we get a 7-minute Megillah debut, which is pretty, like, that was, do you remember the meme, Brian? Maybe it wasn't a meme, maybe it's just someone on Twitter used to say, play some jazz, and then use a word that I won't use on the broadcast.
I do. I feel like that guy sometimes.
Yeah, me too. Which is like, come on, guys, like, you can do it. And there's this, and then later there's Take the A Train, and this is like a really pretty awesome debut. And clearly, like, we learned from Alive Again that Trey was spending significant amounts of time on things like this, right? He was clearly like spending time on the charts and really like making sure that these songs were plotted out note for note. And it's cool to hear a debut, but also that they were like just into it and stretching it out.
Yeah, and afterwards we get that was a debut. It was a song Paige wrote this summer, and we get like the applause through the room, and we get like the acknowledgement of Paige, emerging as a songwriter within the band, before we go into. Well, I don't know if we need more build up before the next one. I think ultimately, Megillah is like one of those songs that I've never actually seen it live. I'm just pulling up the stats on how it's only been played 71 times. The last time it was regularly played was 5/4 1994. That was like spring 94 is the last time we really heard this song in any sort of a rotation. Since then, we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 total performances. The last time this song was played was 7/22/2003 from Deer Creek. It came out of a Carini and went into Possum in a very strange slotted way, but I would love to hear this song come back.
Strange.
Yeah, me too.
Strange tour. I think this is like we've talked a lot recently over the past couple of years about songs that go back and forth between Tab and Fish, and now Tab is playing a ton more Fish songs, but I think this song has pretty permanently transitioned to just being a Tab song.
Yeah,
I don't think we'll ever hear it again. from Fish.
Really?
Probably not, unless we get horns.
Yeah.
So before the next song, Trey goes, okay, we told you that there were going to be a lot of new songs, and here's another. Just like, here's another one. At this point, he's probably just like, shit, are we actually going to play all these new songs? Like, there's got to be a couple people in the crowd who are like, can you just do what you used to do, guys? Like before this, like back when you guys used to be that band that we saw at Nectar's.
The Jaded
It's
Vets.
called the Jaded Vets of 1990. It's called Stash, and he doesn't even emphasize it. Like, I'm providing incorrect emphasis there. Trey just goes, it's called Stash, and like my thought when that happened, and then you just hear that boo doo 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 doo.
I mean,
I was just like I felt like there's that gif of the guy, I think it's it's Eric from Tim and Eric, who's like, he's got the whole universe around him, he's just like with like everything's exploding around him. Like that was me when that was happening, because I'm just like, this is not ho hum Stash. Like this is a song that is going to define a actual musical approach that the band is going to take over the next 4 years. That is going to be, all of their jamming is going to be built around the idea of tension and release. And how do we build tension? And can we build it with melody? Can we build it with noise? And what happens when we actually build up all this energy in the room and then it spills out and everybody, relishes in it? But also, like, I started thinking about, the 11/14/95 version and the 7/2/97 version and the New Year's Eve 2003 version, and like what this song is going to contain in terms of jamming, exploration, and what this song is going to mean for this band as they grow and as they evolve and as they change and as they go through challenges, and even where this song is now. Like, think about the Mexico version that absolutely fucking rocked.
So fucking good. Yeah, definitely a highlight.
This is a song 33 years later is still paying off for this band, and he just kind of debuts it middle of the second set. Whoever's hanging around, we're going to keep playing new songs for you guys. Here's another one. It's just called Stash. And boom, it's right there.
Epic.
What does this song mean to you guys? I mean, this is the debut of this song. Like, what does Stash mean to you guys as Fish fans?
Stash is like when things get weird. Stash is like, I think when they play Stash well, it usually means the show's going to be good. I think Stash to me is like, I just remember I used to, like, when I first started to go see Fish and they would play Stash, I would dance like, I would just feel like I was like a secret agent. And there was like, I don't know, I was just like on a mission. And I just remember just like getting low and like creeping around. And there's just, this song is like a whole vibe. It's like a whole atmosphere, a whole universe. And I think it's one of those like dank, dark universes that only Fish could make. To me, it's like the portal into like evil Fish.
We just have to note Sherman's comment, where is Jonathan for the stash discussion?
Agreed.
This is unacceptable. Jonathan could not be here today because he said this is the debut of Stash and it's too much for me, and I'm going to divert the entire conversation towards Stash. So we're kind of doing that for him, but it was too much.
I remember in 2013 being at Merriweather for 7/14/2013, and this was like I'd seen Fish every year, since they came back, several shows, but this is when I really started. It's like a month after we launched the podcast, and I was really like getting back into Fish, and they played Stash in the first set, and it's a really good one, and
So good.
it just reminded me that like this song is just it, like you said, Megan, it's an interesting way to put it. I don't think I would have explained it that way, but like it's something that only Fish could do, like taking you in this on this crazy journey. And it's one of the fishiest fish songs, which is like, I guess if we're allowed to say that's the best way to put it.
Yeah, it's a song that like that Merriweather version is a perfect example of it. That was at a point in the tour where they had kind of figured out what they could do, building off of the successes of late August 2012. And, they have a really great start to the show, and then they throw it on Stash, and it just has this opportunity for them to explore. And that version, I think, it's one of my favorite versions, or one of my favorite performances of that entire summer tour, because it really showcased, the freedom that they were playing with. But I remember when I finally left bouncing around the room in Wilson and started exploring other songs on a live one, that version of Stash from 7/8/94 is right there, the second track on the first disc. And that is the archetypal tension and release jam. And they just perfectly build that up. And while I couldn't communicate what they were doing at the time, I was like, whatever just happened, I want to hear that again.
Agreed.
So that starts us on this journey with Stash that we're still on. Like you mentioned, the Mexico version was great. Okay, there's some other stuff, and then I already talked about Take the A Train, and then The Dude of Life comes out, and then they do Double Encore. What did I miss?
Well, we have to talk about the debut.
Hold on.
What the fuck?
Come on. Rewind. We have to go back to AC/DC Bag.
This is one of the like gem segments that we have discovered. So I've maybe listened to this show once, but I cannot remember listening to it. Anyone who has not listened to 9/13/1990, who's listening to this show, please, if you're going to do anything, press play on the Okipa ceremony and do not let up until Reba is over, because specifically the segment of Okipa, AC/DC Bag, back into Buried Alive, fucking second performance of Buried Alive in the same show that it was debuted, right into Take the A Train, into Sparks, the first Sparks since November 5th, 1988, 221 shows, and then Reba. This is a segment of music that is like pulled right out of 1993 Fish. I cannot believe that they played this in 1990. Everything I've ever heard, everything I've ever thought about 1990 Fish was just completely ripped apart when I listened to this segment today. And I went back, re-listened to it. I was totally blown away. It is fluid. It is creative. It doesn't even think about efficiency. It just thinks about creativity and being in the moment. Like, as I was listening to it, I heard, and I have a question about this that we'll talk about here in a little bit, but I heard Fish like 3, 4, 5 years into the future right here at the tour opening performance in 1990. It was amazing.
Yeah,
you can't yada this.
No, RJ, like when they're playing AC/DC Bag and they're just like giving it to the lyrics, they're like having so much fun singing this song, and then they're like jamming in it a little bit, and then you hear Trey do the like secret language signal, and then he plays the first line of Buried Alive, and then boom, they're all immediately back into Buried Alive. It's phenomenal what it takes to do that as a band, especially a song that they've just played for the first time tonight. Then they're playing Buried Alive again. Trey does the signal again and plays the first line of Take the A Train, and boom, they're in a jazz song. Take the A Train. Like, what the fuck? Who can do that? It's amazing. And then they play Sparks by The Who. I want to hear this song. 14 times played.
You never heard Sparks?
No.
Last time played was one of my 2 or 3 favorite Phish shows I've ever attended.
Yeah,
Just
you
Which
got to
one? The
see.
S show in 2011 or 2016?
12/30, 2016.
Yeah,
Mm,
that's a really good one. I
yeah.
haven't seen it either, but I thought Megan, as a more well-traveled person, would have seen it.
I'm
That's a
so
good.
well-traveled.
That's a really good show. The 12/30/16.
Yeah.
Oof.
It's a great cover.
It's such
It's
a good
amazing.
I think
cover.
that's. I think
They
it's
rip it
gone for
up.
good. Also,
You do? No, it was in
I think so.
2016. That doesn't mean for good.
I don't know. I'm just saying. I'm just sharing my opinions on this.
I think it's one of those at this point, because if you're looking at this, so this version is the first in 221 shows. It won't be played again for 392 shows, August 2nd, 93. Then it's played 9 shows later, 8/14/93, in the middle of that crazy 45-minute antelope. 41 shows played at the Bomb Factory, 65 shows played 10/29/94, a show that we discussed here a couple of years ago on HF Pod. Then it goes 173 shows, 11/29/96, the Cow Palace, great old dead venue. 463 shows, it appears at the S show, and then 201 shows, 12/30/2016. One of those, it can only be played on a 12/30 type of shows. I feel like this
Yeah.
is one of those songs that someone needs to like nudge Mike pre-show and be like, "Hey, you guys haven't played Sparks in 7 years now. Like, you just gotta, let's just do it."
Just do it.
RJ, that's your job.
Is that my job?
Yeah.
All right, fine. I'll do it.
Okay. Thanks.
The last time I talked to Mike, he told me I looked like his the contractor building his studio in his house. So I feel like the next time I see
You
him,
did?
I forgot
Is
about
that
that.
true?
and his contractor's name was Brian as well, and it was this very strange moment where Mike was having a moment, and I was like, "Can you just let me have a moment, dude? Like,
Yeah.
you're,
He was like, "Sorry,
you know,
I'm the one supposed to be having a moment right now.
no,
right?"
not anymore." Okay, so one thing, I know the Dude of Life pretty well at this point because I've seen a bunch of shows with him and stuff, and I kind of forgot like his singing is really good. He's got a great style.
Yeah, these are
I kind
fun.
of like, I had that album back in the day, but
So did
haven't
I. So
listened
did
to it
I.
a lot. It's good. I think those songs are really good.
I don't really remember much of it, but I definitely had it.
I mean, they're obviously like Self, the first song they play, the riff from that becomes the riff for
Chalk.
Chalk Dust.
Yeah.
But
It's fun
The
to hear it like
songs-
slower. Yeah, you can
yeah,
hear
the
it.
songs are great. I had
This
fun
could have been
during
a
that.
radio hit. Like the lyrics, like "Welcome to the '90s. Hope you make it through." I mean,
Yeah.
this is a real
Yeah.
1990s like cheesy song. Like I don't know.
Here we are.
Mom, it's
Great.
the
Yeah.
90s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like this album. I remember getting it early on as a Phish fan. I think to your guys' point, like there's almost a weird what if of could Phish be a really strong backing band for like a really charismatic lead singer.
Mm.
I'm glad that they didn't ultimately do that, but like if you could imagine them just focusing on chops, like basically being sessions musicians, I mean that's not where any of us would want them to go, but it gives you that weird kind of what if of what could this band ultimately do if they decided to chase record deals and to chase, a little bit more kind of stability than the path that they went down.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm glad everything worked out how it did.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the Holdsworth thing. It's like it didn't really need to be a 2-guitar band. It was not gonna. I think through this project, we're going quickly, but like thoroughly through, and we're like, I think everything worked out how it was supposed to.
Yeah. This is
But I
a fun
would
way to end
welcome
the
an-
set, though.
I would welcome a 40th anniversary Dude of Life sit-in.
Totally would.
That would be really fun. That'd be really,
fun.
really fun.
They could do the whole album.
Maybe at
I'm just saying.
MSG.
I think Trey would have to check on the audience about 4 songs in, but I could do like a Dude of Life encore appearance, playing a couple of these songs, play 2 or 3 Dude of Life songs. That'd be a hell of a
Making
lot
an
of fun.
encore. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I mean, there's some good, like Dahlia is great. I think that was probably the highlight. Crimes of the Mind. They have played. I think I saw
Since
Crimes
then.
of the Mind.
Really?
I did. I saw it in 2009. I saw the
don't think I
two. They played it 3 times since '94. I saw 2 of those 3, which is
Wow.
So what
crazy.
That's crazy.
3 times since 94, so they played it 11/29/09,
Yep.
10/28/16,
Yep.
And what's the other one that I'm forgetting?
11/28/03. That was the
Yeah.
first incident
And they played that with the dude.
with the dude. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he came out for that.
That was a
version.
weird. That I hope the 40th is different than the 30th or whatever. No, 20th.
The 20th.
Like I went to that show and then I went to the Albany show when Holdsworth came out, and it was just sort of like it was
Yeah.
kind of weird. It was just sort of strange.
Sit-ins don't usually work with this band.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And also they were like, things were weird then. Okay, so that's double encore, Lizards Lagrange. This was a fun show. I'm glad we chose this one. I feel like this had a lot more like there's some context here for this year that maybe we wouldn't have gotten with some of the other shows. So
Mhm.
I feel like this was a good choice by us. I'm proud of us.
It
I
was
think it
so
was
fun
a-
to listen to the show.
Yeah, this was I don't want to say shockingly fun, but like this was an incredibly fun show. I'm just looking through the next few shows. We're going to get more debuts here this week. They're going to play in
Wow.
Providence, where they're going to debut Destiny Unbound. They're going to debut Eliza in Keene, New Hampshire, and then everything is just kind of how do we integrate these songs into. Oh, we'll get Gumbo's debut on 9/28/1990. But the band is going to be doing a huge tour around the Northeast and they're going to start to go south as we move into the fall of 1990. This is a huge, huge tour that they're on. They're debuting all of these songs, and they're going to play this stunning Halloween run in Colorado, really reassert themselves in Colorado as kind of their second home base, this second region that they can come back to over and over again. There's just a lot happening at this point in Phish history that goes beyond the music that's being played on the stage. Like they're really setting themselves up for the decade in a really cool way, which who knows what their expectations are at this point in time for their overall career, but you can see kind of the formula taking shape. We talked a lot throughout the 80s shows about the formula of what a Phish show sounds like and how does a Phish show flow, how do their songs flow. Is this going to be a band that primarily jams, or is this going to be a band that focuses on compositions? It feels like that's all been sorted out at this point in time. It's now how do we expand the amount of people that want to hear us.
Yeah, I agree. That's kind of what I was saying in the beginning. Like last year was like expansion, like stretching out to new parts of the country. And this year is just like hustle, like playing all the shows you can, writing all the music you can, debuting all the new stuff. I mean, they're working really hard. It's an exciting time.
Do you think at this point, none of us can know this, so I'm just curious your guys' speculations on this. Do you think at this point that they were happy to be where they were at, or do you think that there was an element of stress? Because I almost wonder, to what you just said, Megan, like you almost get the sense that Trey was like, I got to get everything that I've ever thought down onto paper, and like I have to get every song written at this point in time, which is why there's so many debuts. But do you guys think that like they were happy with where they were at this point, or there was like added stress and added pressure?
I think they were. I think they were happy. I think they were about to go to Colorado. They were touring all year. They're clearly writing new music. I think they were having a blast.
Yeah, that's what I think too. And when you read about kind of their intentions at this time, they weren't like, we got to get a record contract. We got to do this. They were skeptical about that stuff. I think they were just more like, we have to write music. We have to play all the time. Like, and I think it was probably what they wanted to do.
And oh, sorry, go ahead, Brad.
Well, I was going to follow up on that because I was thinking about this today. So I think I'm on the same page with you guys. I feel like this is like for in a lot of ways, this is like as most success as they probably imagined themselves getting when they started doing this in 83, 84, 85. But obviously, like so much of Phish is defined by what happened in the 1990s. And you ask any Phish fan for their favorite shows, 9 times out of 10, people don't have the balls to say anything outside of the 1990s. Like they just don't, for a variety of reasons. at the onset of the decade that will arguably be their peak, both in terms of the music that they write, in terms of the shows that they play, in terms of their notoriety. Um, what do you guys think are expectations? Like, what would be realistic expectations that they would have at this point in time for this decade? Because to me, the idea that they would
Mm.
end the decade 9 years later playing to 80,000 people, a 7-hour show in Florida is absolutely like nobody's even conceiving of anything like that, let alone, playing Madison Square Garden. Like, what do you think is a realistic expectation for this band as they stand here going into the 90s?
I have no
Maybe
idea.
just that they don't have to have day jobs ever. I
Yeah.
think that's
Yeah.
I
probably
think
all they
that's it.
wanted, right? Like, we just don't wanna have a day job, so, like, as long as we can just make enough money to, like, keep getting better gear and, like, keep writing music and keep having fun playing music together. I mean, they don't ever seem like they were trying to do things except for write really good music and play better and sound better. I mean, it seems like everything that they made, they put the money back into, like, equipment, or, like, the light rig or, touring stuff to tour with. Like, I feel like they really were just trying to keep being able to do what they were doing. Yeah, I
Um,
mean, what Brian Golenberg says is exactly right. They were always happy where they were. They couldn't believe people are coming to see them, and that is 100% how I felt when I saw them fall in 1994 in in a small theater in Michigan, and I thought, like, they seemed just so excited by the fact that people were there and were excited about it. And they were, like, a month off from playing Madison Square Garden for the first time at that point. So, I mean, it's just yeah. That's always been their I think, why they've been so successful. They weren't ever trying to gun for something that made them be
yeah.
inauthentic in any way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's fair. Um, so what do you think well, I guess I have I mean, they haven't even done the Giant Country Horns tour yet.
No.
Yeah.
There's so much that they haven't done that like we will talk about. But
I mean,
man,
that's where this thought came for me because
Yeah.
and Jeff Katz has a great comment here. As a 20-year-old at the time, 1990 was pure magic. Each time I saw them, we were having a blast. The band looked like they were having so much fun. Stan the Man says,
So
"Never buying
awesome.
cheese again." I mean, these are all important achievements and important levels. I really hope that Stan is referencing deep seated HF pod jokes at this point in time, because if you're listening that well, thank you. Um, I think I agree with what you guys are saying, and to your point, RJ, like um, the idea, like a year from now they're going to play the Giant Country Horns. 2 years from now they're going to open up for Santana. 3 years from now they're going to start to play amphitheaters. 4 years from now they're going to play Madison Square Garden. 5 years they're going to play twice at Madison Square Garden. Like, there's just so much that's going to be piled on
I
top
can't
of.
wait to do these shows for these years. It's gonna
Well,
be
and
so
that's why,
fun.
like, I
Sorry.
was thinking about this is like they've achieved so much. Like, for so many bands playing a venue like the Wetlands in New York City and having a
Yeah.
full room of people who you introduce your drummer as Zero Man, and the place is like, yeah, fuck yeah, more of that. Like, people are super into
Live
their
long and
inside jokes.
prosper.
Yeah, right.
That's
Like,
the
people are
yell.
so into this, and there's a part of it, it's kind of like that point in like the rock biopic where like the story is told into this point in time,
Yeah.
and then all of the 90s will be one big montage, and we'll get to like the troubled periods, but like this is where like all the work has been achieved, and rather than coasting, I think, to something you said earlier, Meg, I don't think that they necessarily care about the success, which is why they're just pouring all of the money that is being made and all the resources that they now have access to and the time that they can dedicate this. That's all being poured into the project. And it's going to be a 9-year period in time where everything that these guys think about outside of their families is fish. And I think that that's part of what will lead ultimately to them taking a break
Yeah.
after 2000. But it's also like they're on the onset of, like, every show that we pick from here on out is going to just be a band like leveling up once again and again, even if that's not what they're consciously thinking.
Yeah.
Totally.
And next week we will be back, as you may predict, with 1991. And we don't know what show we're going to choose, because we like to figure that out, later. So I hope you guys will join us, and we'll have Jonathan back hopefully next Monday. Brian, Megan, thank you both. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I loved all the comments today, especially Brian and Jeff and others who were there during this time. So
Yeah. Thank you
keep
so
sharing your
much.
memories, and anyone who's listening, send us thoughts. If you were at some of these early shows, we want to hear from you. Otherwise, we will see you all next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.